from the crypt.
Hello, boils and ghouls. Welcome to episode 177 of Dads from the Crypt. My name is Jason. Today, I'm joined by Jody.
Hello.
And Mondo.
Hello.
Hello, gentlemen. How are we? What's good?
I'm in recuperation from the week I've just had.
Yeah, Jody's had a hell of a week. So
And we've had the flu go through my entire family. Had a death in the family, not my immediate family, but then we've had just fun. And tornado warnings last night.
Yeah.
Cap it all off.
Have you thought about ever just leaving Tennessee?
I had
For many reasons.
so many times I think that, but I do have reasons keeping me here. So
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I live in a red state too now, so
don't we all?
apparently. Yeah, yeah, right.
Don't we all?
I was last night. We watched. I was watching a Strange Brew again because my wife had never seen it, and then after Canadian Bacon came on. And have you guys ever seen that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Which one is that? Is that the one where they try to leave Canada, or
No, where John Candy's basically the sheriff of a Niagara Police Department, kind of saves a president's life from a fake assassination attempt, and then we decide to try to invade Canada and make it the 51st state.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm watching this movie. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? What timeline did I just seep into?
Is that the one where someone's trying to invade Canada and they have a bus that says "fuck Canada" on it, and they get pulled over by a cop because it's not in French as well as English?
Oh yeah, they get pulled over by Dan Aykroyd, who gives them a spray paint can and says you need to fix that. So they do all the slogans again in French.
Yeah, okay, I remember that scene from that movie.
And they go to the jail cell. Goes, this guy's in here for having a bad day. Like it's kind of it's a fun movie, but man, it's the parallels you can draw from that to what is going on all around us today is pretty insane.
When we have a comedy movie and we're like, yep, that's real life now.
That's almost never a good thing, right?
No, it's not.
Pretty much.
Did our president watch Canadian Bacon and be like, yep, we're doing that?
This is a great idea.
Oh man.
Well,
maybe. Oh god, never mind. I was
going to say we're not intentionally a political podcast, but
it's
the way horror goes, especially with the movie we're talking about today, it just kind of happens. It's just kind of neat.
Yeah, we do. We try to. We do talk about it here and there. We'll try to keep away from it. Give you guys a break from normal everyday. Whatever this is.
To be fair, a lot of horror is, inherently political with the stuff.
Yeah,
I watched Bones last night for the first time. The Snoop Dogg starring movie, but
I like that movie.
It was really good.
Ernest Dickerson, isn't it?
Ernest Dickerson, yeah. But it's very political. It's about gentrification and how the government introduced crack to poor communities. Like, hey,
if you guys ever want a kind of a crazy show to watch, there's a show they did on FX and it finished up its run, I think last year. Snowfall, and it's about how the government introducing cocaine into California, and then the people who learned how to turn that into crack, and how they kind of teamed up with the government to distribute crack and make money for the whole like arms race and stuff. And it's pretty crazy because so much of it is obviously they do take creative liberty with some of it because with the characters and whatnot. But it's a great show, but it's deals heavily with how the crack became an epidemic in poor communities or in different communities, and it's really kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah, I think every podcast I listen to, for some reason, over the last month, has gotten more political. I don't know. So I guess that's just what we're in.
It's one of those things where when it's injected in everyday life, and at this point, it's not just affecting the U.S., it's affecting other countries and other people around the world. I think we're in like growing up, at least, like when I was in high school, when I even went right out of high school, I don't want to say you could kind of ignore politics in a way.
Yeah.
Everything wasn't right there in your face. But I think today, especially with the advent of social media and the fact that all this stuff just comes out the minute it happens, it's really, really hard to hide yourself from it, even if you're trying to do a brain cleanse. Like, I think everybody should understand what's going on, but I also understand people that are just fucking tired. I get it. I'm there. I'm with you guys.
Yeah. It's so much more in your face. Where it used to be like, okay, you pick up a newspaper, you put on the news at a specific time. You were able to like compartmentalize what was being presented to you. But now it's like everywhere
my phone beeps at me with some fresh hell every 15 minutes all day long.
Right. So it's all one big feedback loop. But
yeah.
If anybody follows me on Instagram, I'll repost some political stuff here. And usually it's not even political stuff. It's more so humanitarian things, like how we should be treating each other as humans. But like even on Facebook now, like if someone posts something political, I just move on. I don't care if I agree with it, disagree with it. Yeah. It's not worth getting into it.
I'm done fighting online. I've played the game.
And the reality is, for anybody out there that does it online and gets frustrated with their friends or family members, everything about this is better discussed over a cup of coffee than on Facebook or on the internet or over a beer, because so much is lost in tone, so much is lost in intention. And I honestly think of a lot of people, different sides of the spectrum. Although like I'm not breaking bread with someone who's far right and thinks Nazis are okay. That's just not going to fucking happen. But most people, I think, we're closer to center, and if we all sat down and just kind of chatted about things as human beings, we probably find we're a lot closer than we really realize as far as what we want out of life, et cetera, et cetera. Like I have friends that are definitely, I don't want to say, I don't even know the right word to say, because they're not ultra conservative. They just lean right. But they would 100% believe if you're trans or gay, like fucking go do your thing, be who you want to be. Like I'm not here to stop you from doing that. And I can respect that, but I still think you should have voted a different way.
Yeah. I mean, I live in deep red Tennessee, but
it's a state and an Argento hellscape.
Yeah. But the South has had a long tradition of like, hey, mind your own business. Everybody do their own thing. Like, everybody's got a gay cousin. Everybody I know in Tennessee has a gay cousin, and nobody thinks anything about it. Like nobody's upset about it. Nobody cares about it. They're all fine with each other, but then they vote stuff that would affect their own cousin. Sometimes the cousin votes for it too. Who knows? It's weird around here.
Moving back to horror, Jason. See what I did? I segued.
Yes.
I segued. I'm trying to get back on track here.
We had to get that out. We haven't had a chance to get all this garbage out.
But some of the best parts about horror films when they do portray LGBTQ characters is when they don't make them like they don't go over the top with the presentation or over the top with the exposition around the character, when the character just exists in that realm, because that's everyday life. Like for people saying you don't want trans people in your bathrooms with you, guess what? You probably already stood next to someone who's transitioned, and it's cool. There's nothing wrong with it. Like a sign on the door is not going to stop a bad person from going in and doing bad things. They want to do bad things. And I also think a lot of people who believe like that have just been fed the worst information and believed in the worst information. And if they actually met people who look like them but we're not born like them, they realize, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. And who knows though. But the good thing about horror movies is that they can we at least, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, we can all agree that horror is an awesome genre. we can learn from horror. We can learn from society.
There you go. So today, so today we're taking a quick break from our Creep Show reviews, which we very much enjoy doing, but need a little break every once in a while. And I was at CreepyCon a couple weeks ago, and I got to meet Brian Yuzna. So I was like, had a hankering to watch Society, which is an amazing movie. We'll obviously get more into it, but before we do, I believe this movie came out in 1989 in Europe, but didn't come out to the US for a couple of years, I think, because they just didn't know how the hell to market this movie, because it's a very unique movie. But Jody, tell us about Society. Tell us about how we live in this society.
Just real quick, I love the fact that the same year that Brian Yuzna directed Society, he also co-wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So my childhood there, and then in Society. All right, so we start our movie by meeting our main character, who just doesn't feel right in his family. He feels like he's a little different. Family's very strange. They're very rich, and everybody in this movie is very rich, except for a handful of the. I don't want to know, not necessarily just the protagonists. There's just a handful of people floating around the rich people's orbit, but for the most part, there's very rich people, and they live in a mansion in Beverly Hills. And he his name is Bill. He talks to his therapist, and he said he doesn't trust his rich family. And after all of our introduction time, things really kick into high gear when his sister's ex-boyfriend gives him a tape, or lets him listen to a tape, where it sounds like all kinds of insane things are happening in their family. That there's this orgy happening that involves his sister and his parents and a bunch of other crazy rich people. And so he gives the tape to a psychiatrist, but when he comes back later, the tape is completely different. All of the crazy stuff has been removed. And so Bill starts wondering if he's going crazy or if there's actually something happening. And so he tries to meet with that ex-boyfriend to get another copy of the tape, but then there is a car wreck, and from what we can tell, the guy dies. Okay, so then Bill gets to go to a party with some of his rich classmates, or one of his rich classmates, Ted Ferguson, who pretty much confirms, that tape's real, because he told about all the things that they were going to do. The next day, he confronts his parents and sister, who, and just every time you see the parents and sister, things are just wrong. Like Dad's giving her a shoulder massage in his boxer shorts while Mom lays around in laundry. Like, it's not good family dynamics. It's bad.
That was the nicest way you could have put any of that.
It's bad. It's just very bad and creepy. And just every scene has this kind of like undercurrent of like, ugh.
If you walked into like a family member's house and you open the door and that's what was happening, you would just leave and call the police. Like, no discussion.
So he confronts him, and then he goes to the guy's funeral, and seems like maybe the body or something weird happened to the body, because one of the guys pokes his cheek and like it collapses in on itself. There's this whole subplot about a student council election where Bill's running against this super rich guy, and the super rich guy, Martin, says, "Hey, let's meet up." And Bill finds his car in the woods and his throat's slit. But then when he gets the police, of course, everything's different. There's a different car. None of this is happening. So, man, there's so much happens in this movie. I'm just trying to keep it all straight. So he goes to school, or Martin, the supposed dead guy, is at school the next day. He confronts his family again, but this time his doctor shows up and gives him some kind of sedative, knocks him out, and they take him to a hospital where he wakes up and just walks. I'm not really sure why they take him to the hospital, because like they just let him walk out like 30 seconds later. But then it all comes together at a party.
That's what
a party at his house. Dr. Cleveland is there, and he reveals that all of the rich people, including himself and Bill's parents and sister, and this judge guy who never takes his cigar out of his hand, all of the rich people, they're different than us. The rich, they're so different. They're a different species than us, and they feed on the poor, or at least the less wealthy than them. Because I don't think anybody in this movie is actually poor. They're just not ultra wealthy. Because to Elon Musk, everyone's poor except for him. And they all begin. The supposed dead guy gets drug out. All of the rich people strip down to their underwear and begin like melting into a huge blob of humanity that just sucks the life out of this guy. And Everything's all rubbery and gooey and squishy. And at one point, the judge jams his fist down somewhere in the backside of this boy and reaches all the way up through his body and puts his hand out of his mouth. Everything is very wet. This is the wettest movie that has ever existed, even before this scene. Just everyone just damp all the time. There's like there's a whole subplot with a girl who Bill likes, and they have a sex scene, and like everyone is dripping through this entire, like it looks like it's 150 degrees all the time because everyone is just sweating and wet. But in this scene in particular, it's just wet, gooey mush of people absorbing people's blood, bodies. I don't know. It's a mess. A lot of stretchy stuff. Crazy special effects. They feast on his nutrients, absorbing him and killing him. They're going to do the same thing to Bill. But then Bill gets in a fight with the rich guy from the party earlier. And he's losing the fight up until Bill manages to reach inside his body, reach his hand up into this guy's face, put his fingers out the eye holes, and then like grab him and pull him inside out till he's like completely flips inside out. At that point, everyone's shocked. They all kind of back off, and Bill and his girlfriend, who is part of this but has fallen in love with him, and Bill's best friend all get in the car and drive away. And the party, I guess, just continues on. The party is called the shunting, by the way, which we will talk about. A new term if you've never heard it before, because it just exists in this world of melty people. Jason seems like maybe there's something else. I don't live in LA. I don't know, man. Maybe this is like a thing.
I don't know exactly the origins, but I know it was used for trains. You know, when you push trains together to get them to lock. That is known as shunting.
Well, there's a lot of pushing together.
Exactly.
Jason lives near Hollywood. I'm sure there's shunting parties somewhere in Hollywood that are happening right now as we speak.
One of the reasons I like this movie so much is because the at least the exteriors of the house, the mansion, is in Pasadena. It's a very famous house called the Wrigley House. So it was owned by the ultra wealthy family that started like Wrigley's Gum and Wrigley Field. And Pasadena is a very old money area, at least it used to be, because it was the end of the end of the railroad that took people from the East Coast to the West Coast. So all the very, very rich people made these big mansions in the Pasadena area where the railroad used to be.
Let's get as far away from the commoners as we can.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, Pasadena is definitely not a rich area anymore. But there's but you'll see like these big houses, and now it's actually owned by like the Rose Bowl organization. The family donated it to them at the end, at some point. It's used for like weddings, and the Tournament of Roses organization works out of there. So it's a place I just drive by, and every time I drive by, I just kind of giggle at it.
I'm loving the idea of somebody being like, I want to have my wedding in the shunting house. That's going to be something special for us.
It's even better. Imagine you own this house in the 80s and a producer comes to you and asks if they can use your house for a film and they're going to pay you for it. So you're like, cool. You leave, you come back, and then 2 years later, you see this movie.
Well, not many people, especially in America, saw this movie. So
yeah, very true.
You could easily like tweak the script to just be like a rich boy, feeling out of place kind of movie, make it like a teen drama. So they might just give them like those parts of the script. Well, and have the barriers, and someone's like, oh, okay, this one.
What I've heard in the original script, it was just the rich people like killing off the poor. But then Brian Yuzna was like, hey, let's do something a little extra here.
Scream at George, is prolific makeup artist guy who did a lot of like the Nightmare on Elm Street stuff. I just imagine him and Brian Yuzna just sitting there like dropping acid and trying to figure out what to do for the end of this movie.
Yeah, it's definitely though one of those things. Everyone sat around with their buddies at some point, especially when we were younger, and talked about cool kills in horror movies that they could do. And it was you definitely know at some point in Brian Yuzna's life, he goes, "It'd be really cool to turn someone inside out." Yeah, and then he had the chance to do it, and he's like, "Yeah."
or to have like someone's head coming out of a butt and then calling themselves a butthead.
Yeah.
I have a pin of that actually.
Nice.
And I really like. There's some subtle effects before we get to the actual shunting that I really like. Like when he is with his girlfriend, and he looks up and like she's twisted around backwards, like her front half of her upper body is facing him, but then her back half of her lower body just wrong. Like everything just wrong with these people.
And then so what I didn't quite get was her mom part of all this, or was she kind of the dissenter?
I have so many questions about the mom.
So okay, so I read some old interviews, and the whole deal here is that these people were infected by a parasite thousands and thousands of years ago. That makes them, what they are, but they're still they were a human race at some point, and then they kind of like split off. But the reason they do the shunting is because they're becoming inbred, so they need commoner DNA to kind of thin out the pool a little bit. So what I'm guessing is the mom is the aspect of, not his mom, but the girl Clarissa, I think is her name.
Clarissa,
her mom character, which is like almost brain dead to some degree. I think she's like the result of all the inbreeding. And if you notice, a lot of Clarissa's dialogue is very off. Because at one point, like, she's offering him tea, and she's like, "Do you want sugar? Do you want milk? Do you want me to urinate in it?"
Yeah,
like with like no, like with a total flat ass, voice or whatever. So I think whatever that line is, it's become like, okay, they're kind of getting a little too far gone.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out. I did some internet searching to try to figure out what was up with the mom character, because she's such a odd character. This big, like, hulking woman, like she's huge and tall and like football player build, but she has this blank expression on her face. And she grabs hair all the time and lots of makeup, and it's a weird portrayal, and I love it. She's one of my favorites.
It's such a little, almost like when you with all the weird stuff that happens in the movie, you still kind of taken aback when she coughs up hair and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just because whereas the parents are almost trying to hide it from the son because he's adopted, I assume, right?
Right. Yeah. No, we do find that out during the show. Yeah. The reason why they're going to eat him is because he's not really part of them. He's been kind of raised like cattle to be eaten.
But here's this mom who obviously has something wrong with her brain, who's just completely open with doing these weird things. So I think it stands out a lot because it's always just kind of puzzling in the movie why she's doing those things. But that makes a lot of sense that she's one of the ones that just didn't turn out the way they wanted it.
Yeah. Right. It's the fifth clone in multiplicity.
So I mean, this movie really gives me Sleepaway Camp vibes in a couple different aspects. And one, and like, it's really notorious for the ending, so much so that you kind of forget about a lot of the other movies. It's not until like the second or third time you watch it that you like really pay more attention to like what's going on like the first hour than the last half hour. And it's also one of those movies that like it's just general insanity, but like everyone's so committed to it. This is like, people try to make a quote bad movie sometimes to be entertaining, but like, you need to be committed to it. You can't be laughing at yourself or anything. You have to act like this is like Shakespeare, or this is how you're acting. Everyone is like,
the whole movie.
Yeah, everyone plays it so straight and so serious.
That's one of the creepiest things. The parents act like nothing is weird about anything that's happening, and the sister too, and that kind of makes the whole thing even more absurd. That these weird little things are happening, and no one but this one character cares. So I honestly think the first time I ever watched this, I was kind of wondering if a lot of this was happening in his head. Because they do play it off, him seeing a therapist, they're obviously pointing to him having past trauma, or mental issues. So I kind of, the first time I saw this, and they gaslight him a lot throughout the movie, and you kind of wonder, like, is he having the psychotic breakdown? And then obviously the ending happens, and you're like, oh, it all kind of ties it up nice. It ties it up nicely with a little bow on top.
Yeah.
Imagine how that house smelled.
Imagine like the cleaning crew has to come in there.
It's like you'd open the door and just a rush of stench and heat would come out of that fucking place.
Yeah, this movie also reminds me. If I was to like describe this movie using other movies, I would say it's like Nightmare on Elm Street 2 meets They Live.
You can
I
see
see
some of that.
Yeah.
Or obviously we have the male protagonist trying to,
Mhm.
figure out what's wrong with him. And then, you have this other hidden society. It all kind of comes together in that.
And Nightmare 2 definitely is the one that leaned a little bit into body horror with
Mhm.
Freddy coming out of this kid, basically taking over this kid's body. But I think one of the main differences though is in Nightmare on Elm Street, everything was really happening to him, and he was kind of the catalyst for all the bad stuff happening too, right? In reality.
Well, yeah.
Whereas in this one, obviously, it's a purely innocent character who's kind of being driven mad by the things going on around him and all the gaslighting.
Right. Yeah, but the guy who plays the main character, Billy, is played by Billy Warlock, who's the son of Dick Warlock, from stuntman from Halloween 2 and many, many other things. And Billy Warlock, his son, is actually in Halloween 2. He's the guy who's carrying the boombox that runs into Michael Myers.
Oh,
that's cool.
And I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure it's the same hospital that they show up to. Is the same one in Halloween 2.
oh yeah, because a lot of Halloween was shot there in Pasadena too, right?
This one, I know the hospital in 2 was filmed somewhere else in the LA area, but I think it's the same hospital. Yeah, I think he does a really fun job with this. He really kind of anchors the movie, playing that kind of scared paranoia. But then, like, again, that scene where Ashley kills in the hospital and he doesn't give a fuck anymore. He's just kind of threatening everybody.
Yeah.
I thought that was very entertaining. And then the actress who plays his girlfriend at the start of the movie, she was also in she was in one of the Friday movies. She was also in Sleepaway Camp. That's Sleepaway Camp. Slumber Party Massacre 2. So she's been a lot of
she's the one in Slumber Party Massacre 2 who has the gigantic zit that melts her whole face.
Yeah. So yeah, we got a really fun cast here, and some of the the judge and stuff. I don't know how or who they blackmailed to be able to get this cast and these filming locations. I don't think this movie cost very much, but they stretched the budget really, really well.
No, I think all the budget went into the effects at the end. Although somehow, again, the cast is really good. This is not a really corny cast or anything in there. It's really well acted and well done. That judge character is so gross with his and it's once everyone gets to the shunting and everything's all floppy and bouncy and lips are flopping and tongues are flopping. It's
and he has the birthmark that was on the original guy. Well,
yes,
that part's freaky. Also, I thought it was interesting that the guy that they Blanchard, the quote boyfriend that was trying to out them that they killed, supposedly. I noticed that his funeral's at a synagogue, so they're playing he's Jewish, which is another kind of way of othering him. But they also have open casket, which again is not something you do in Judaism. You almost never see that, really.
Do you think it's almost done intentionally in this to be kind of I guess kind of pervert how his faith?
It's like I say, it's entirely possible, or they just didn't care or didn't know. I would take any of those three answers.
No, I see it because the way they portrayed this society as they care about their own elite and they don't care about anybody else. Why would they care about honoring this guy's his proper funeral rites?
And also they wanted to poke a hole in his face in that scene.
Yeah,
right.
I'm
not saying it's one or the other. It's just an interesting aspect. Also, it's like Blanchard is again kind of a tall, schlubby, chubby guy dating his sister, who's like the pinnacle of society. It's like the crown jewel. So I always thought that's an interesting bit there as well. They don't really seem like they make much sense together unless she is quote grooming him for the shunting.
Which he could be. I mean, and it seemed kind of also in this where you saw, and I'm kind of the question I kind of had about this is, at what age do the children know what they are and what happens? And it almost seems like it was like this is supposed to be her coming out party, where she knew what she was, and then this is what she was going to do to, I guess, I don't know the right term, consummate the the change. I don't know what to say in that term, but
and one aspect that I didn't get really into in the synopsis is how weirdly sexual everything is in this movie too. It's not just they're absorbing everything, but there's so many weird, like incestuous type things going on among these rich families. There's the scene where Bill goes to get like some sunscreen and he sees his sister in the shower. And again, it's that like her butt and her boobs are both pointed in the same direction. Like she's twisted around backwards and things are in the wrong places. And he stands there staring at her. Like just everything in this movie has kind of this ickiness to it, you know?
Speaking of which, the whole sunscreen scene too. I'm like, can
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can we make this somehow more?
A lot of white sunscreen sprayed directly on faces. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's I also love like the guy who's going running against him for class president. He's so like smug and
Yes.
so punchable.
You really want something to happen to that guy.
It's also one of the 80s tropes where like, every teenager in this is in their 30s or in their mid-20s,
right.
at least.
No, and my favorite is the Ted Ferguson kind of bully guy who I keep wanting to say Turd Ferguson. I think that's a Norm Macdonaldism from SNL. He like is what I would expect Ben Affleck's like shitty younger brother to act like and look like.
Yeah. No, they very, very much they cast the rich people as the most punchable people in film. They're all so obnoxious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's meant to be a condemnation
that's
of
intentional.
high society and those elite social circles that kind of look down on everybody else. Which is also a cool revelation when you find out he's adopted, because then it all makes sense as to why he was treated that way. Because at first I was kind of wondering, like, is he being treated like this because he's the male of the family and maybe the males don't get the same, who knows? But I like the fact that I like how you said, Jason, how they raised him as cattle basically. And at the end, like all those little pieces make sense. So I think you mentioned this earlier too, that this film is one that definitely benefits from a rewatch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they even put him
more.
Yeah, even and when they go to capture him, they put like those things with like the pole with a little loop on the end to capture him. You know, like you would a stray dog. So even more so. I was just looking up. The father also is Captain Derouche, or almost looks like Captain Douche from Tank Girl.
Oh, that's funny. That's a good movie.
That's one I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, that's a really good movie. I mean, again, we love what's her name?
Lori Petty.
Rachel.
Well, I like Lori Petty.
The woman who did like Nightmare 6. Rachel Talalay, yeah.
Oh yeah, from
But yeah, again, society just has so much going on and so many cool visuals that just being thrown at you. Even if you've seen the memes and stuff, it's worth watching the whole movie. If you could stomach that kind of thing. Like there is actually very little blood, which is nice. They obviously we're like thinking about like the censors.
It's just goo. It's not a lot of blood. It's wet.
But you can use that to great effect. Like, Drag Me to Hell. Drag Me to Hell is one of the grossest, has some of the grossest scenes, and it's PG-13. And there's it's not bloody. It's just gooey and gross.
Yeah.
Right. Also, we were supposed to have Shelby from the Bloody Disgusting podcast on with us, but she had lost power the night we're going to record, and then like we just could not find another time. So I also did a quick mini review because that was her first time ever watching the whole movie. I'm like, I can't ask someone to watch this movie and not be able to debrief about it.
There's a lot to talk to somebody after your first time with the shunting.
So I did a quick mini review with her, which will be out within a couple days of this one coming out. So make sure you check that out too, and always check out the Bloody Disgusting podcast because it's awesome. All right. Any final thoughts on Society?
I mean, on the movie or just what we're going
started that way.
Dun, dun, dun.
I mean, we could be just a much kinder society if we just got together with a bunch of strangers and shunted.
Could we?
No.
No.
It's a terrible idea.
All right.
In a time when the rich are really running over everybody right now, it's this movie has a lot to say, I think.
I'd say so.
Kind of cathartic.
All right.
But I kind of wish more bad things happened to them at the end, but I guess that's more realistic because they keep getting away with it.
Yeah, that's
It
kind
is
of what.
definitely- the ending is like almost, if it wasn't so much to process,
Mm-hmm.
like if it was, so in an alternate universe where they just did a straight up, okay, we're just like tearing off pieces of people and eating them for shits and
Mhm.
giggles, and then they get away, I think the movie would be a lot less effective because you'd be like, okay, so what happens next? But I think because you're still so in shock of what you just saw,
Yeah,
them getting away, you don't even have time to process, and the movie's over.
right. It's really kind of
So-
a downer ending because I mean, our lead people escape, but nothing changes, which
Mhm.
I guess is probably part of the point.
I think that is kind of, yeah, definitely a takeaway from that is, and I do feel like right now with our climate in society, it feels like nothing you can do is going to make a change. But
Well,
hey, the reality is, if one person can get away from the shunting, there's
It's a start.
Well, there is that
you got to
moment.
start somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the moment where Bill kills just one of them. This is probably
One
the
guy.
first time anyone's ever been killed, during one of these things, and they all freak out so much.
Mhm.
Like, they just can't handle the idea that a commoner could do anything to one of them.
So maybe they're
Um,
much more vulnerable than we think.
Right, but they feel like they're so empowered, yeah, that they're untouchable, and they just like cannot handle the idea of one of them going down. I thought that was also a very interesting reaction for them to have.
Yeah, I have things that I could say at this point, but it'd probably put me on a watch list. So
Yeah.
let's just move on.
All right, let's do a rating on this one. Again, this is a hard one to rate because it's like you have to. This is a movie you really have to take on its own merits because there's nothing else really quite like it in many ways that it tries to go for exactly what it's going for. Where it's like even Brian Yuzna said, like, it's his first movie directed. He feels like there's a lot of things he could have done better, but it's like I don't know. It's kind of once you're on. It's a movie that once you're on its way, it demands you to be on its wavelength.
Mhm.
You can't just walk in and walk out of it.
Yeah,
So
taken on its own, this is like it's pretty perfect to me. It's,
right.
It's a perfect time capsule of exactly. It's weird because the things that we're going through today and the things that were happening in 1989 were apparently a lot more similar than most of us realized. Because there's a lot of the same stuff happening. But as a movie on its own, this is 5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if I can give it a 5 because a 5 is a perfect movie, but I'd give it a good 4.5 easy.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it's just, again, one of those things where I don't really just feel in my heart it's a 5, but there's so much stuff going on, and who knows, on the right weekend it might be a 5, on another weekend it might be a 4, but it sits somewhere between there. So
There is nothing like it, though. You can definitely say that. There's no other movie like this one.
I mean, very ambitious to do in the late 80s, right? As we turned over into the 90s. And I mean, and speaking of politics, it was right after the Reagan era ended, but didn't really end because then we had GW come in there and take his place. So I think that was one of the times we probably saw a lot of people who were very unhappy with how the direction society was taken. And the other kind of cool thing I didn't mention in this, it was also from 1989, seeing a young man going to therapy is kind of unheard of at the time.
Well,
So
I think it's something that might be more like, oh, we have the status to do that, or like, we are of value to be worried about that, where the common person wouldn't be able to take the time or the money to go do that.
I can see that, but when you look at it in a lot of how they portrayed that a lot in horror, it was more so sending your kid off, like kind of like in Nightmare 3, where she has her daughter see a therapist and goes, I don't want to deal with this, just go stay in this mental institution. But a lot of times the therapist aspect you'd see with females, so it's kind of cool to see that. But I also wonder if it might be a European thing, where in Europe
yeah. But also the counterpoint to that is it detrimental to the idea of going to therapy, seeing that how the therapist is actually in cahoots?
That's a good point. That's good. It's just interesting though to even see that happen.
Yes,
so.
I agree. If you're gonna start, I guess to start anywhere. That's one place to start.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and to be fair, they actually of all things, The Sopranos, seeing Tony Soprano, this alpha male. I did air quotes for anyone that's not watching on video. But the head of a crime family who goes to see his therapist because that's what centers him to some extent.
Yeah.
That was pretty brave too to do in the mid-90s.
Right. All right. Well, let's take a break and do a quick shout out.
Hi, I'm Brian Yuzna, and you are listening to Dads from the Crypt.
Yeah, I had the flex.
Yeah,
all right.
And I will say before we completely move on, anything Brian Yuzna's directed is most of the time a fun time. Like it's a mark of quality to see Brian Yuzna's name on something. The Dentist, those movies, and he really enjoys his special effects too. He likes to make you squirm.
Reanimator, he did Return of the Living Dead 3, which is way better than it has any right to be.
Yeah. It produced a ton of great stuff. All of Stuart Gordon's stuff is almost all Brian Yuzna produced.
Yeah. And that's the only time I was ever attracted to a zombie.
Yeah.
That's about zombies. But all right. Mondo, give us your song of the day.
So I pretty much nailed it on the head today. So as we're recording, I'm thinking like, I know there's a band that wrote a song about this movie. I know there is. So I found them on my Apple Music, and it is on Apple Music. The band is called Chained to the Dead, and the album is called A Gruesome Encounter. It's kind of groovy, 3-minute, 2.5-minute songs of death metal band. Nothing groundbreaking, but I think they're a fun band. And at least on this record, all of their song titles have something to do with horror movies. I mean, the opening track is called Beheaded by Berryman. They have a song called You're No Saint, No Time to Scream, Slaughtered in Their Sleeping Bags. You can guess who that song is about. But they also have a song called, and I quote, The Shunting. So it's honestly a band I haven't listened to in quite some bit. I can't remember when this album might have actually come out last year, now that I think about it, because my brain doesn't work so well anymore. I get hit in the head a lot. CTE joke, everybody. CTE joke. But check them out. The band is called, I think the album came out in 2019. So A Gruesome Encounter, Chained to the Dead. Their song is called The Shunting, in honor of society.
Very good. Thank you, Mondo. Jody, give us some horror news.
You're welcome.
All right. Let's talk releases first. If you have not seen Terrifier 3 yet, it is now streaming on Screambox exclusively. You've been able to get it for a while on VOD and stuff like that, but if you're a subscriber, it's worth checking out there. We did our review on Terrifier 3 a few months ago, but yeah, it's definitely worth watching, I think.
All the Terrifier movies are on there, plus they have like an Art the Clown, almost like Gulag or Yule log, where he's just opening up presents and stuff. And it's like 45 minutes, but it's really 15 minutes that just loops. Definitely just a fun thing to put on the background if you want to look up every now and again and see Art being silly.
And I think Damien Leone did a curated list of movies and stuff on Screambox too. So like movies that influenced him to make Terrifier movies. So other releases. So I'm a big fan of the podcast Colors of the Dark. That's got Elric Kane and I'm blanking, Rebecca
McKendry.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
It's morning. It's morning after a long week. My brain's not fully engaged yet. But anyway, Elric Kane directed his first movie and just came out on Shudder. It's called The Dead Thing. If you listen to the podcast, you know that he loves movies like Possession and things like that. And so I've heard comparisons to those kind of movies. I like Elric. I'm definitely going to check that out. Also, a new movie from Scott Derrickson that I don't think is a horror movie. Is it horror? Jason, you've seen it, right? The Gorge?
Yeah, so it's horror sci-fi. It's interesting because I saw like a test screening for this. Like, I have to look up. It might have been 9 months ago. And I guess at that point they were thinking about going theatrical. But
premiered on Apple TV Plus.
The premiere on Apple TV just this week. It's funny. It's interesting because the Valentine's Day does play a part in it. So it came out on Valentine's Day.
I think it's on Netflix too, isn't it?
No, it's Apple exclusive.
Really? I could have sworn I saw a trailer for it after I finished up Cobra Kai, but I could be wrong.
It's got Miles
I might
Teller
look
and
it
Anya
up.
Taylor-Joy in it, and
It's a
directed by
movie
Scott
where
Derrickson.
like it has a really cool concept, and
Ooh.
it's kind of like where the more that you find out about it, the less it becomes interesting. So I like there's a really it's actually really cool setup, and like halfway through you kind of reach a pinnacle of like, okay, either we're gonna go fully and tell you everything, or we're gonna kind of tease it out some more. And it just decides to go full into it, and I guess narratively they couldn't figure out where else to go. I'm trying not to ruin anything, but
No, the trailer looks interesting.
Miles Teller, I'm kind of hot and cold on. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I like him in this one. Anya Taylor-Joy, I always enjoy. I just find her so charismatic. So she's really fun in this. Fun in a serious way because they both kind of play like assassins kind of thing, but with this weird test they're given. So there's a lot of things like I think once it gets you'll know when there's like a turn in the movie and like okay, it just kind of goes more formulaic. What was interesting was the effects are fine, they're good. But when I saw the test screening, it was all like with like previs, so like PS1, PS2 era effects. I was kind of liked it better when they had these like terrible effects, almost like in the campy way. But no, it's a fun movie. Again, if you like those actors, yeah, and if you like Scott Derrickson, it's always it's always interesting.
Yeah.
It just loses some steam in the second half when they try to switch things up a little bit. But I still recommend seeing it.
Also, as far as releases, because I haven't had a chance to mention them yet, I missed last week because of all this insanity. But Hard Eyes is in theater right now, and if you get a chance to see it, you absolutely should, because I saw it last night and I loved it. Now, it's like it was made directly for me, though. It's good comedy. Like the comedy scenes are very funny. They make me laugh. It's very slashery, very gory, and the romance at the center of it actually works. Like it really works as a romantic comedy. If you've got somebody who enjoys all of those things, I loved it. I thought it was great. So definitely go check out Hard Eyes.
We're going tomorrow. We're recording on Sunday, so we're going tomorrow for a matinee screen.
Josh Rubin, who directed it, makes a cameo in there, and I was like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like I'm literally at a point like, "Hey, it's John Rubin."
Does he come out and say, "No problem"?
No problem. But yeah, it's a very noticeable cameo. Like you'll smile when it happens. And one of the trailers I saw while watching that last night is the new trailer for Until Dawn that just came out. Which is from what I can tell, it's not a lot like the game at all.
It is nothing, not even a little bit like the game,
but it still looks fun. Like
it does. It's like horror
kind of
Groundhog Day,
a time loop thing where they keep dying, and every time they come back, there's like new monsters that are killing them off.
Yeah, isn't that the concept of the game though, where like you kind of like replay it to try to make different decisions and see how it goes?
Yeah, but there's still the core story doesn't change though in the game.
And the core story is a little more straight slashery and a little less monstery. I think it's been a while since I played, but there are some monsters, but it's not.
Okay.
It's not as cabin in the woodsy as the trailers make this new movie feel.
Yeah, definitely play the game. I think the game is fantastic.
Yeah,
and the story I think is really, really good. And there is a cool little twist in the movie or in the story.
Anyway, I'm excited about Until Dawn. It looks like a fun movie. It just looks completely different than the source material.
Yeah, I agree.
Mondo, you saw The Monkey just recently, right?
Yeah, I saw The Monkey because they did the early screening this past Wednesday on the 12th. I loved it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
To me, it's probably my number. I mean, granted, we're so early in the year, but it's my number 2. I don't like it more. I like Companion better. I think you could argue that the Companion is more like science fiction than horror. Have you guys seen the Companion yet?
I haven't.
Yeah, I saw it.
The flu kept me away from it, and then it's already left theaters around here, unfortunately.
Yeah, Companion's more like not Annihilation, Ex Machina.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. But The Monkey is it's a good time. There's literally only one scene I had a problem with because I thought the CGI, like they did a lot of practical effects in this and a lot of great effects, and they did use CGI for a lot of effects, but it looks good. It looks like it's enhancing what they're already doing. But there is a scene in this where I was like, you could have done something different than what you did, and because the CGI is a little bit over the top and kind of took me out of it a little bit. But the performances are good. I forgot the main actor's name, but he plays both himself and his twin brother as an adult, and that's always kind of cool when you see this. The person's on screen basically talking to themselves, but they look different enough to where you think it might be two different actors. I would tell you though, like definitely, everyone should go see this movie. It's gruesome and it's got some good horror elements, and it's also got some fun to it as well.
How Oz-Perkiny is it? Because he definitely like has a very strong style that I feel like gets in the way. Like that's one of my issues.
I would say it's obviously got his fingerprints on it. You can definitely tell it's an Osgood Perkins film, but I would say unlike Longlegs, which is like I think Longlegs is more so his entire direction. Like that's from start to finish. That's what he likes to do, which I really do appreciate and enjoy. This one, I think the fact he was working off a Stephen King story, really kind of, he's allowed to put his flair around it while still keeping this core of the story. Because I mean, I've seen a lot of Stephen King movies, and I think if you didn't know this was a Stephen King story and you started watching it, it would feel like a Stephen King story, if that makes sense. Okay. Like, and that's, I think, is a sign when you actually nail the source material, is when if you didn't read the source material and had no idea what the source material was, and you'd be like, hey, this feels like a Stephen King joint.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I highly recommend it. And it also has some really, really kind of gooey scenes too that are really fun and really cool.
Gee.
Well, speaking of Stephen King, one more little piece of news I have here. Stephen King is making a book with the late Maurice Sendak, the guy who did Where the Wild Things Are. Oh, wow. They're making a version of Hansel and Gretel with Sendak's illustrations and Stephen King's writing, and they're combining those two, which sounds interesting. Stephen King's done some children's stuff before. I remember reading Eyes of the Dragon as a probably early teen. It's one I'd recommend for, like, I don't know, 12-year-olds. Like it's intro Stephen King stuff. So I'm excited to see what he does with this. The illustrations that they have released look really cool. Don't know when that's coming out, but it was September 2nd of this year.
It kind of reminds me, I think last year, Bill Watterson of Calvin and Hobbes fame came out of the woodworks and did a book called The Mysteries, which is kind of a graphic novel, but each very, very short, with illustrations that he worked on with the other guy's name is, I think his last name is like Cast or something like that, but they worked together to make something that looks nothing like anything they've done before. And so it's kind of the opposite, where Stephen King going into the young adult world, this is Bill Watterson trying to make dip his toe a little bit into the horror fantasy realm.
Nice. All right, and I do have one more piece of news that was surprising to me because I thought the project wasn't happening. So Linda Cardellini, who is fantastic, she was Velma in Scooby-Doo, and she was in Freaks and Geeks, and always like seeing her in things. But she is reportedly in talks to star in the Crystal Lake series that I thought had been canceled. But I guess it's still happening.
I think it's put in like turnaround where they put on the brakes, but they're still kind of working on it. But then it looks like they made a breakthrough.
Yeah, I think from what I had read, she may be talking about the role of Pamela Voorhees, which would be really cool because she's a great actress. And I was just excited to find out the Crystal Lake series was still happening. I thought it was dead. And so just hearing so-and-so was in talks, that was exciting, just to know that the series has not died.
Yeah, that's very interesting because she's a very warm actress, very comforting actress. So it'll be very interesting to see what kind of spin. Again, you can't like not compare it to like the Bates Motel series and
that's definitely what I think about when I think about this Bates Motel.
I feel like it's kind of wild, but we've seen a Hellraiser reboot. We've yet to see a good Friday the 13th or Nightmare reboot, which I mean we're prime for it, but especially with Jason, because you don't really need Grant. I think Kane Hodder definitely, you could tell he was enjoying what he was doing. I love him in that role, but you don't need necessarily, he doesn't have to come back and reprise it at his age. Yeah, I mean, it'd be okay. Whereas I do think Nightmare's tougher, obviously, because Robert Englund is just so iconic in the way he moves, the way he walks, et cetera, et cetera.
There's so much personality in Freddy. Like there's different versions of Jason, and like Kane is always very big and hulking, like you know, breathing and stuff like that. But like all the versions of Jason work just because you can put a mask on anybody.
Yeah. I just find it interesting though that
Right. Well, I think
I'm hoping.
so. Yeah, I think the issue with Nightmare on Elm Street is. Yeah, I think the issue with Nightmare on Elm Street is yes, because it's tied so much to the Freddy Krueger character. So like anyone else is just going to be, it's such a hard sell. With Friday the 13th, it's a legal issue because they've been stuck in lawsuits for so long.
That's right. I do think though, Jackie Earl Haley, we've talked about it before. He was fine as Freddy. He was fine. He did a great job as Freddy.
Yeah.
The material he had to work with was garbage, and he did his best.
No, Jody, did we talk about the Final Destination trailer?
No, I haven't yet. I saw that again before Hard Eyes last night too. It looks great. I love Final Destination, and this one starts off with a man with a septum piercing and the loop in a tattoo parlor, and death does its Rube Goldberg-y thing where one thing falls and knocks this thing over and this thing and ends up getting drug up into a ceiling fan by his septum piercing, and there's fire, and man, it's good stuff.
And speaking of the monkey, there's a lot of I haven't read that short story in God knows how long, but there's a lot of Rube Goldbergness going on in that, and it's a lot of fun. Also, we got Jody. Jody told me who directed this movie, so I'm gonna watch it. But I saw a trailer for a movie called Drop. And it was the most obnoxious trailer I've ever seen in my entire life in a movie theater, because every 15 seconds it's just this loud vibration of a phone. And I bet it's one that works a lot better watching on your computer screen or on TV at home. But in the theater, it was the point where I was like, I almost got up and walked out, and I'll come back when this trailer's over.
Yeah, Drop is directed by Christopher Landon, who did Happy Death Day 1 and 2 and Freaky. So yeah, I'm opening night for that just because I love that guy's stuff.
Yeah, I do feel like that trailer gave away a lot. So I'm like,
it definitely, it's one of those trailers that if you haven't seen it, just don't, because it definitely seems like it gets too much into the plot. But also, I know some people really care about spoilers and trailers. I generally don't. Like, it doesn't bother me that much, but that's just me.
I do, but my memory's pretty bad, and there's an 85% chance I'll forget everything I saw in the trailer.
Sure.
Yeah, my problem is that when they show something and especially if in the trailer you see a lot that they show a lot. I feel like I've seen this one many times already. You get kind of conditioned to like know or look for certain things.
Yeah.
That like if it's a trailer I've seen once, okay, fine. But like if it's one that I see like a million times, especially if that like alludes to a set piece and you haven't seen that set piece yet, you kind of try to figure out how that set piece fits into it.
There's definitely a couple scenes like that I took from the monkey trailer that I was waiting for them to happen, and which because a couple scenes that really stood out to me that I actually remembered. But I get it though. It wasn't detrimental to the movie or detrimental to the plot at all, but and sometimes it can be.
Yeah,
right.
Same thing with Companion, because the first trailer was good. It didn't really tell you much, just gave you vibes and a couple interesting visuals. But the second one gives away a twist, and doesn't ruin the movie because it happens within like the first half hour. But it's one of those twists that like recontextualizes the first half hour of the movie. So like going into it knowing that's what something is, makes you view it a certain way, and it kind of robs you of that moment of realization. But doesn't ruin the movie because the whole movie doesn't hinge on that.
If it's the twist, I'm not going to say it just in case somebody hasn't seen the trailer. But if it's the twist that I'm thinking, I don't think it was actually supposed to be a twist. It's just kind of how it ended up.
No,
the director said he wasn't trying to make that a twist.
I wouldn't call it a twist. It's just something that gradually gets uncovered.
Right.
I think having watched that, I think they do enough misdirection or like things to kind of make it murky that they are trying to throw you off, or at least they're trying to like lightly put in. But there's a very obvious point where you're supposed to realize a thing.
Yeah, the thing I always think about is the Abigail trailer.
Yeah,
because there's a part of me that would have loved to seen Abigail not knowing that she's a vampire, but also I would not have seen Abigail if I had not known she was a vampire.
Yeah.
Like that's the hard thing. Like it's hard to market a movie where the whole concept is kind of a twist. because that's what's going to get butts and seats. But it's also it would have been cool for somebody to say, "Hey, let's watch this movie Abigail," and not know anything about it. Like it would have been cool to have that reveal, but also I don't know how you market it.
Yeah, and luckily that's such a fun movie, and it's kind of it is kind of a little bit over the top that it doesn't hurt it even a little bit. But yeah, I'm with you on that. But if they did not show that twist, it'd just be like, what are you about to watch? And I don't think it'd be intriguing.
It'd be a movie about kidnapping a little girl, and
yeah,
I don't know that would have appealed enough. But you say the words vampire ballerina little girl, and I'm like, yes, I'm gonna go watch that movie.
I'm in.
Yeah, or even like if they like it showed them like fighting with this little girl, but not revealed that she was actually a vampire, you would have laughed because you're like, "What the fuck's happening?"
It looks ridiculous. Yeah, until you know what she is. So yeah, I get marketing movies is hard. Like that's
the takeaway.
There's a movie coming out called Sinners that looks really good. And
the
first trailer I saw for it gave away almost nothing. And I thought it was a brilliantly done trailer where they show these moments of horror, but you don't know what the hell's happening. And I got home and I was so excited to show my family the trailer. I'm like, this is a trailer done right. And I pulled the trailer on YouTube and they give away like all this stuff. And I was like, damn it. Like, why do you have to do this?
Is that the Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan one?
Yeah, it looks good. It looks really good, though. It looks really good.
All right.
That's all I had news-wise.
All right. Real quick, for dad advice, go adopt a pet, man. There's just so many of them out there. I'm in full on adoption, especially like if you're in an area that has been hit by, anything that would cause a raise. Again, the LA fires, there's like the pet shelters here are like overflowing. So we picked one up this week and it's definitely a challenge, but it's good for the soul. Good for your soul. Good for their soul.
If you haven't been to the Dads from the Crypt social media anytime recently, you need to, because Jason's posted some pictures of this little dog he's got. It's what, part Chihuahua, part pug.
Yeah, we think it might be more boxer too. So we'll see what it actually turns out to be. But
it's a cute little gremlin dog. Like, it's great.
I love it.
Jason doesn't post pictures of our animals, but it's okay.
Hey, you don't send me pictures of your animals.
I mean, I post them on social media. You can always steal them and repost them.
Okay, fine, I will.
I recently adopted a 10-year-old little Chihuahua.
Yeah,
his name is Renfield, and he's adorable.
What's the full name?
Renfield.
I thought you added something.
I might have. I don't remember. I was probably high as fuck at the time. It might have given him a different name. He's a little Velcro dog, missing teeth, 10 years old. It's a sad thing where I'm like, I'm not gonna have enough time with you, but hey, I love senior dogs. I have a soft spot in my heart for senior dogs.
So if you have the means and you have like the space for it, it's just it's good. It's good for the soul.
And I do California's done it, Nevada's doing it. I'm not sure how it is in Tennessee, where they're outlawing a lot of dog breeding to really help curb the problem we're having with overcrowding, because you get these breeders who will breed dogs, and then when they can't sell them, they just fucking dump them somewhere. And it's sad as shit. And they're doing a lot of laws against that. And not that laws are going to stop everybody, but it will help, and it'll at least hopefully bring punishment to people doing that. But there's so many dogs at every shelter. Like our shelters are always overflowing here in Las Vegas. So yeah, man, like adopt, don't shop, adopt. And as Bob Barker said, make sure to get your dogs spayed or neutered.
And then Jody just has pets overrunning his house anyway. So
yeah, no, we live out in the country, and so things just show up at our door, and we're like, well, I don't want you to starve. Let's see if you have an owner. You look around, nope. And so then you have a new pet. That's how it works.
That's cool though. And I've always said the best animals you can ever get are the ones that just choose you.
Yeah.
You happen to be there, right place, right time. Like when we got Renfield, we happened to be at the adoption event, and let's go take a look. And I saw a picture of a little 10-year-old Chihuahua. I'm like, he would be good with my 17-year-old Chihuahua at home. And then, but he wasn't anywhere. I'm like, he must have gotten adopted. Then they pulled him out of his little backpack, and we got to hold him, and we just kind of knew right away, we're taking him home. Like, those are always the best ones. So, and to give a dog another chance at life, and it breaks my heart too, how many owner surrenders you see of older dogs when they just got tired of having an old dog, because old dogs do have problems. Like they're going to be a little costlier at the vet. They're going to have accidents inside of the house more often. If they aren't 100% potty trained, that's a pain in the ass. I'm working on that with Renfield because he wasn't potty trained really well. So, but you're still giving this little animal another chance at life because it's not their fault.
Yeah. No, I mean, when we first met, we call him Chug. When we first met him, like, love it. They brought him into a room, and he was still, I think, because he was brought to the shelter during the fires, and you know, it was just so crazy and loud and everything. He's just like really triggered being there. He just would not go near us, and we were very skeptical of it. But we said, you know, we'll give it, you know, a week or so, and you know, we can always bring him back if it's just not a good fit.
Yeah.
And pretty much that night, he started bonding with us. It's the other dog he's still like getting used to, and he's also got one of like puppy energy, so he's just like gnawing on, you know. He's gnawing on my pop socket on my phone. Like,
with what he's been through, he's obviously got trauma there, and he's gonna
but
get through, and he will.
But every day has been a big improvement.
There is no shame if you adopt a dog and bring him in your house and he doesn't work out, and you take him back for someone else to adopt, because if it's not working out for you as a human, it's probably not working out for the dog either. And there's no shame in that. I know it sucks. Like, no one wants to have to take a dog back to the shelter. I've never had to do that, but I know people that have, just because it's like, this dog's not going to be happy in my house, and I'm not going to be happy with this dog, and that's totally fine. It's like having a human partner, right? Same thing, or having a friend. It's the same thing.
We had that happen once, and it was another one of these situations where the dog showed up at our house, because that's what happens out here, and we looked for its owner, couldn't find its owner anywhere. Brought him in, got a little crate for him, and he tore the crate apart and ripped the carpet up in one of the rooms. Like, and we're like, this is not going to work in our house. Like, he's a very high energy dog. He needs a place with a nice big back fenced in yard, you know, and I think he did find a good home. We followed on social media after we surrendered him back, but you know, it just wasn't a good fit for us in our time. So there's nothing bad about that. He found a better fit for him.
I can't remember if it was a comedian or something I heard from a podcast, or someone was talking about how it was a podcast, and Cy Imanson, who's a comedian, but he does a great podcast called Middle of Somewhere. It's one of my favorite podcasts in existence. And he was talking about how he had a German Shepherd puppy when they were younger, and same thing. It just didn't work out. It was just tearing everything up, was getting aggressive with other animals. So his dad, he was at school, and his dad's like, yeah, I took him to go live on a farm. And he's thinking, well, that's the end of that dog. Thinking that he took him out in the woods because they lived in the country. But then then he met the farmer that actually got the dog.
He really did. Really did take him to a farm.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny, but he goes, yeah, he's a great dog, just had to work through some things. He goes, yeah, it was a little rough at first. He killed 5 of my sheep, but now he's,
oh my god,
I was like, holy crap.
Yeah,
my camera just fell.
Yeah.
You know, we started political, but just the night and unpolitical, just don't pull a Christy Gnome. That's the one thing I have to say.
All right. Before my camera completely collapses. Ah, there it goes.
Oh, it's gone. It's gone. This is a good time to wrap this up, I think. So, because Jody's camera is down.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone for listening. We would really appreciate it if you'll give us a rating review on iTunes, a rating on Spotify, a like and subscribe on the YouTube, and follow us at Dads from the Crypt Talk on TikTok. And with that, I thank you for listening to Dads from the Crypt.
Adios.
Follow Dads from the Crypt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or I will follow you to the grave. No, seriously, you really should watch. But be careful what you ask for. You may get it.